issue there. Hello everyone out in video land. This is Saturday Night Live, Life Recovery, and we're glad that you're here with us. And we've got quite a, we've got a crew here tonight. How about that? I was talking about you, Brenda, just in case you didn't know that. And so I want to start off with my weekly thoughts, questions, or quotes. My first quote, and I really don't know who said this. I think it may have been John Acuff, but I'm not for sure. It says that fear gets a voice, but it doesn't get a vote. I thought that was pretty good. Shall I say that again? Fear gets a voice, but it doesn't get a vote. That was interesting. I'm going to throw this one in here. I got this off the internet. It says, take my advice, I'm not using it.
I like that. Yeah.
All right. Here's another quote that I'm not for sure where I got it, but it ties in with the lesson, so I'm going to give it now and I'll refer back to it later. And it is dialogue or communication with your enemy is imperative. Why? Because if you don't establish a dialogue or a platform of communication, then the alternative is war.
Got an enemy like that.
Excuse me?
I have an enemy like that.
Okay, all right. So anyway, those are a couple of thoughts that I had today, and we're going to be talking about personal boundaries. And that's a pretty complex subject, but a so beneficial and useful information that we're going to be going over. And of course, this is out of our Life Recovery Bible and Step Guide. And so I'm going to be talking about at the end of the meeting, related subjects. It says 4 ways to set and keep your personal boundaries. Anybody interested in that? Okay, hopefully you'll do it. It's only 4 ways, so it shouldn't hold you up too much. So anyway, we are going to get started. I'm going to have Paul. He's going to be our MC. We're glad to have him back, so welcome, Paul.
Good evening and welcome to Saturday Night Live.
Yes, sir.
We're glad you're here and we're glad you're there. We love and accept everybody here. That's one of the things I've always commented, and I'm so proud of Saturday Night Live because they have taught me how to love other people without any judgment. And come join one of our meetings. We will love you and we will help you get through whatever your stuff is. And we want you here. We don't want your stuff, but you're welcome, clean, sober, drunk, or high. We love you. We want Saturday Night Live to be a safe place, so we don't want anybody spreading rumors or what they've heard here. Now, most everything that's going to be on video, you're going to know about, but any private conversations about somebody and pictures of people in the meeting are a no-no. And we also want to be respectful to everybody, so we've asked the guys here to silence cell phones and kind of keep things quiet while somebody's up here giving out information. Because what's said may not be important to you at the moment, but it may keep somebody alive that's out there on their last thread to dying. Saturday Night Live mission statement. Our passion and mission at Saturday Night Live is seeing lives transformed by helping people find a personal relationship with Jesus and to find freedom through Jesus Christ, being an example of the love and acceptance. We really do have a mission, and we started how many years ago?
Well, we're working on our 18th.
We're 18 years ago, and that was long before I was here, but the few folks that have held this thing together, and it's kept moving forward all that time, and been here to help people get through their addictions, get through whatever that would be, whether it's drugs, alcohol, cutting, anger, If you're suicidal, come talk to us. We want to help you get out of that pit. Because we do have a mission and it is our passion. Saturday Night Live is about recovery. We're faith-based, but we're about recovery. You don't have to believe in Jesus to come here. We're going to help you anyway. And that's our thing, is recovery.
Yes.
Not being sober. We want to change life so that you'll be able to function without that little voice nagging you in the back of the head that there's something better that'll take away the pain, because whatever it is your addiction is covering up some pain somewhere. We want to help you work through that pain, and we'll do that. Just have to have a desire for recovery. Are there any announcements?
We're having Saturday Night Live tonight.
We are having Saturday Night Live tonight, and pretty much every Saturday night
Pretty much.
here at Central Christian Center in the basement in the back. Come join us. And moving right along, we're going to go into the 12 steps, and John's going to come read the 12 steps for us. John, come on down. Everybody welcome John.
All right, John.
Yes, you did a good job, Paul. Number one, we admitted that we were powerless over our problems and that our lives had become unmanageable. Number two, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Number three, we made a decision to turn our wills and our lives over to the care of God. Number four, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Number five, we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Number six, we were entirely ready to have God remove these defects of character. Number seven, we humbly asked God to remove our shortcomings. Number eight, we made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Number nine, we made direct amends to such people whenever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Number 10, we continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. We sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and power to carry it out. Number 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to others and to practice these principles in all of our affairs.
Thank you, John. Everybody
Thank you, John.
show John some appreciation.
All right, John.
So now we're going to go into the step. We're on step 10 tonight because it's the 10th month of the year, and that's the way we do it. We start out in January and then move along, and Tommy's going to come down and do the step for us. Tommy, come on down. Everybody welcome Tommy.
All right, Tommy.
Go, Tommy!
Hi, everybody. I'm going to read the Bible reading first. It's Genesis 31, 45 through 55, or 45 through 55. So Jacob took a stone and set it up as a monument. Then he told his family members, "Gather some stones." So they gathered stones and piled them in a heap. Then Jacob and Laban sat down beside the pile of stones to eat a covenant meal, to commemorate the event. Laban called the place
I'm not there yet, but
Some big word. Go on.
Jacker Sahada Dutha.
yeah, that's pretty
I
close.
guess. Okay. Which means witness pile in Aramaic. And Jacob called it Gilead, which means witness pile in Hebrew. Then Laban Laban declared, "This pile of stones will stand as a witness to remind us of the covenant we have made today." This explains why it was called the lead witness pile, but it was also called Mizpah, which means watchtower. For Laban said, "May the Lord keep watch between us to make sure that we keep this covenant when we are out of each other's sight. If you mistreat my daughters, or if you marry other wives, God will see it, even if no one else does. He is a witness to this covenant between us." So this pile of stones, Laban continued, "And see this monument I have set between us. They stand between us as witnesses of our vows. I will never pass this pile of stones to harm you, and you must never pass these stones or this monument to harm me. I call on the God of our ancestors, the God of your grandfather Abraham, and the God of my grandfather Nahor, to serve as a judge between us." So Jacob took an oath before the fearsome God of his father Isaac to respect the boundary line. Then Jacob offered a sacrifice to God there on the mountain and invited everyone to a covenant feast. After they had eaten, they spent the night on the mountain. Laban got up early the next morning, and he kissed his grandchildren and his daughters and blessed them. Then he left and returned home. Interesting. Personal boundaries. Continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. We all have particular weaknesses, and it is often helpful to establish personal boundary lines to support these weaker areas. We may need to clearly define our commitments to others. We may need to agree on certain limitations in order to maintain peace. Once the boundaries have been established, honesty is needed to maintain them. An assessment of our honesty is keeping our commitments needs to be a regular part of our everyday life. Jacob and his father-in-law, Laban, had some conflicts. As they were working them out, they entered into an agreement by drawing a clearly defined boundary line and setting up a monument to remind them of that commitment. May the Lord keep watch between us to make sure that we keep this covenant when we are out of each other's sight. See this pile of stones, Laban continued, and see this monument I have set between us. They stand between us as a witness of our vows. So Jacob took an oath before the fearsome God of his father Isaac to respect the boundary line. That was Genesis 31, 49, 51, 53. Restoring trust in our relationships is part of recovery. To do this, we should define our expectations and enter cautiously into commitments. We are not merely responsible for what the other person knows about. We are personally responsible for our own honesty before the watchful eyes of God. These rational commitments are not to be entered into lightly, but when we make them, they must be diligently maintained. I was thinking of things like when I signed a lease on my home and I had to read all the rules, sign them, then respect and follow these rules while living there. As I grow out of my ways lived throughout my years of addiction, I find myself reevaluating my involvement with those around me. In addiction, I would allow myself to lower my standards and cross boundaries I now wouldn't think twice of. I catch myself wondering, what the heck am I supposed to do now sometimes? So I have a small group of people I can seek advice from. I I have noticed there are both positive and negative boundaries I will not tolerate others to cross with me, though I have found myself overstepping those boundaries dealing with some people in my life. When I do it for wrong reasons, I do have some form of a guilty conscience to deal with. But I have to remind myself I'm just a work in progress and I'm learning. Any questions, Doug?
So what'd you learn out of this?
Some people you just gotta let go. Family, friends, anybody. There's a lot of people who just stop having any kind of interaction with because it's not worth it.
That's true, that's one. Is that all you learned?
I've learned how to relate with some people that are around me that were worth having around me because I wasn't doing or living the way I was. So our relationship became better.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you.
And did boundaries, is boundaries part of this?
Totally.
Totally, okay.
Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Tommy. Everybody show Tommy some appreciation. All right. So, the step is we've continued to take a personal inventory and immediately admit that we're wrong. That, at this point in the steps, it's starting to get really easy. We do the 12 steps here at Saturday Night Live, and I recommend if you haven't done them, get a book, do the 12 steps, work your way through them. It starts out understanding that you're just lost and helpless and you need some sort of direction. And then you go and you do an inventory and you realize that as an addict, most of us have left a trail of disaster behind us. And we go clean most of that up as best as we possibly can. And then we move on to this area where if we make a mistake or we offend somebody, we don't have to pack it up and keep it with us for a long period of time because we know how to go and solve a problem today and it doesn't become baggage and you don't have to carry it in your life. But to get to this point where the steps get really pretty easy, you have to do the other 9 first. So I'm just asking, suggesting, begging, please get a step book and learn how to go through the steps and learn what recovery is. And we are here to help if you want to show up on Saturday night. We love you. And now we're going to move on into Doug time. Doug, come on down.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate that. And I appreciate you too, Tommy, for that, and John for reading that. We're going to next week. We're going to have Willie the rookie in doing the reading the 12 steps, even though he's done it once. So he's only half rookie, right? So, and Paul, thanks for doing the MC and kind of filling in with a little bit of reflection. Does anybody have any other information about reflection you want to share? Thoughts?
Rookie is something I need to be called a long time.
Okay, all right. Let me read a definition of personal boundaries. And it says, boundaries are limits and needs. I thought that was interesting, far as because we think about boundaries in more of a limit term, but it's also need term. Okay, it says boundaries are limits and needs you express to yourself and others in order to feel safe, healthy, and comfortable. What do you think so far? These are especially important in relationships. I'm going to say this again. These are especially important in relationships. These are especially important in relationships, and the big key is that communication. We have to communicate, and we'll be talking more about that here in a minute. And if we don't if we do not have established communication and in any relationship, then setting a boundary can be hard. Would you agree with that?
Yep.
Actually, even with in a relation, even having good communication in a relationship, sometimes, most of the time, setting boundaries are hard.
Still hard.
It's still hard because until we had learned how to function in that capacity, it's new, and so it's hard. Does that make sense?
I think communication goes a long way with not having to set a boundary. If you can
That's good.
discuss something that is offensive to the other one, and you can work through that, then you don't have to set that boundary.
Absolutely. I remember having a professor, it was a, I don't remember if it was psychology or sociology professor, but he was saying that the only real communication that anyone can have is conflict communication. Everything else is just fluff communication. You look at me like you don't understand that.
I don't totally agree with that.
Well, he was saying that if you're not working through challenging and difficult things, then you're not really communicating. And if you're communicating and it's just all fluff, then it's all surface stuff, and it's not getting down into the issues of your life that helped you to build a relationship. It was his point. And you can disagree if you want, but it don't matter. That's still what he said.
Well, yeah, I understand that.
So,
But I don't think there's conflicts every day that you have to work through.
that's true. But that doesn't mean that if you're not working on building your relationship, and the only way you do it is by working through things, then you're not. It's not real authentic communication. You're talking, you can talk, it's friendly, it's surface chat, but it's not communication, according to this professor. And I agree. I agree with you. So, but you have a valid point. But I think most of the time, I think that what he has to say is really the issue, because a lot of times our other talk is not resolving anything. It's not coming together. So, any other comments on, and I'm glad you guys are sitting on that side. Last week, we had a total lopsided thing, and so Tommy was making fun of me because I would look at me over there pointing at me, and it's just not the same thing. So, any other comments?
I have trouble maintaining my boundaries. When I get them set, then I veer off, and I don't do what I'm set the boundaries for.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody else has a trouble with it.
So, you said you have problem, is that your terminology?
I have trouble maintaining boundaries that I set with people. If I set a boundary not to send money to a person, I tend to go send the money anyway.
Okay.
Crap like that.
And who has the problem?
Me,
Okay.
it's my issue.
And who can address this problem?
I can address the problem.
And was there a question to go along with that statement?
I'm just throwing it out there because other people may have the same issue
Well,
that many issues.
A lot of people set boundaries, but they don't enforce their boundaries because they think it's a good idea, but then that's when the hard stuff goes on. It's called, I'll do it. It's called growing up,
Yeah,
right?
being responsible for yourself.
Yeah, and so if I don't police my boundaries and people run over me, then I can play the victim. oh my God, everybody's taking advantage of me.
Yep.
Boy, it got quiet there, didn't it? Oh boy, is it gonna be one of those kind of nights tonight?
Only if you let it.
You're right, you're right. Okay, so, did I get through that? Yes, okay. My quote that I read earlier, I said it was gonna relate, and, my opening statement here, or my definition of boundary. I'm trying to find that quote, is about dialogue or communication with your enemy is imperative, okay? Why? Why is it imperative? Because, and this can be, this can be with a family or friend or enemy, okay? All right, a dialogue is important, or communication, because if you don't establish this dialogue or a platform of communication, then the alternative is war, or hurt feelings, or being mad, or falling into the abyss of being the victim. Yes?
Yeah.
All right. Any comments before I go on to the 4 ways to keep your personal boundaries, to set up and keep your personal boundaries? Anybody? Okay, all right. This is right off the internet, and this is Psychology Today. I always like to pull stuff off their site if I can, and I thought this was would apply to what we're talking about and might be helpful. You tell me if it's helpful when we get done with it, okay? All right. 4 ways to set and keep your personal boundaries, plus how to get yourself out when all efforts fail. I thought that was an interesting follow-up statement. And they start off by saying to start setting your boundary, to start setting your boundaries straight, try these 4 things. All right, here I'm going to give you the 4 things, and then I'm going to go back and talk about it. Is that okay? Sounds good? Number 1 is know your limits. Okay, know your limits. Number 2, be assertive. Be assertive. That may or may not apply to some of us in this room. All of us, maybe. Number 3, practice. Now, of course, when I soon make this statement, you're going to say, no, that's not way, you don't believe that, and then I'll restate it in my way. Number 3 is practice makes perfect. And I say practice makes permanent, right? Practice makes permanent. Some of these folks don't have it all together yet, so, but that's right. They're still learning, right?
Thanks.
Number 4, if all fails, now this goes to one of the things you were talking about a while ago, Tommy, said if all fails, delete and ignore, okay? Number 4, if all fails, delete and ignore. Right? If all fails. First you have to do all the other stuff before you go into the delete and ignore aspect. I mean, you got to try.
Or hang up and block.
And hang up, that's delete or yeah. So first we got to do the other before we do that. But then there can be a time. In fact, I was in a meeting this week with some folks, and there was a call, and one person was on the phone, and they were making threats and accusations, and I just, I tried to steer and let them know that wasn't a healthy way to communicate, and finally, I just told them, hang up. And they did. I mean, we told them.
She's looking at me, because
We've been there.
we've been through that exact scene.
Yeah. And so, and it wasn't on my phone, it was on another person's phone, and that person called my phone, and they were different when they got on my phone. But the meeting has already broken up by that time. So, anyway, I'm just saying, we're not to that point yet. It was just a story that popped in my head. It's pretty fresh, so.
I have a rule, you can't yell at me over the phone.
Well, that's not a bad rule, and my rule is, there's, I guess I operate by the 3-strike rule is the way I do it, you get 3 strikes.
That's my boundary that I set.
Yeah, that's your boundary, but, my domain is a little different than maybe your domain, so.
But you can call back about nice stuff.
Yes, absolutely. Not a problem. So, we'll go to number 1. Are you ready? Okay. Know your limit. That is so important. Knowing your limit. So clarifying, clearly defining what your intellectual, emotional, and physical, spiritual boundaries are with a stranger, a work colleague, a friend, family, or an intimate partner is so important, okay? First part of that is we have to know in ourselves, because how can we communicate our boundary to somebody else in a rational way that they can understand if we don't understand it ourselves, right? If we're not clear, how can we be clear?
Well, I was thinking having boundaries with people that have no boundaries at all.
Is that a question?
It's the thought.
Well, yes, you can. And Paul communicated some of his boundaries with people that evidently that are maybe boundary challenged. How about that? Is that okay? Right? Huh?
They're limited.
Well, and so but the idea here, the first step is you have to know your limit. You have to know what it is that you want, because it's like building a fence around your property. You need to know where you're going to build that fence. And I remember this last house I bought, I had some guys out putting up a fence, and they called me and said, "Hey, the neighbor to your," one of my directions, and said that that their fence, because I just told them to line up with the neighbor's fence, and it says that fence is not on the boundary line, it's 8 inches in front of the on their side of the boundary line. I said, okay, then go put it wherever he says. Okay, I said, if put it 8 inches, put it a foot, put it 2 foot. I don't care. Just, if he says, because I don't want to be on his property, okay, so it's no problem. But we have to know, and I didn't know that, I didn't know he had done that until we were building a fence. And by the way, we were building a fence before I moved in, because that's the way my wife always has done it. Because you got to build that fence before you get to the house, okay? Which, Linda, if you're listening, that's okay, it's the way it is.
That's her boundary.
Yes, it's primarily for her animals and her dogs, and generally they never use them anyway. So, but we build them. Okay. So know your limit. So you need to know where you're at so that you can communicate that, and you can communicate it clearly to others. Okay. And so, because oftentimes we can. Now this may sound kind of strange, but oftentimes we kind of know where our boundaries are, and we assume other people know our boundaries, so we expect them to deal with us where we assume our boundaries are, even though we're not really communicating them. So when they don't operate in the place of our assumed boundaries that we assume that we have, that we feel that we have, then we get offended and hurt because they cross them. Because we're assuming they know.
Yep.
And maybe they know, maybe they don't know, maybe they're trying to find them out themselves, right?
Yep.
Does that make sense? Do you understand what I mean by trying to find out themselves? I remember Dr. James Dobson talking about that, because in the earlier days, you used to have a policeman that would go downtown and shake doors, okay, and to make sure that they're locked. Now, he didn't want to find any open, but if he did, then he would take action. So he knew where the boundaries are supposed to be, and they were supposed to have their door locked, right? Sounds, and so, but oftentimes people still do the same thing. They check where our boundaries are. Now, even if you tell them where the boundaries are, they will see if you're really serious about your boundaries, right?
Yep.
Hello?
Yep.
Kind of like somebody was talking about a while ago that somebody wanted money and you say no, and they say, I gotta have money, and you say no, and they say, I need to have money, and you say no. And the reason why they do that is because they know where your boundary is. And how do they know that? It's because they know they just gotta keep asking because you will say yes.
Yep.
Right?
Just shut them up.
And how does that work out?
Works out good for them, but not good for you.
No, it just reinforces that you have no boundaries.
Yep.
Okay?
And the next time you give up with less requests.
Right, yeah, it's easier to give up next time.
Or you have borderless boundaries.
Do what?
Or you have borderless boundaries,
Borderless boundaries, it almost kind of sounds like our southern border, doesn't it?
pretty much, yeah.
Uh-oh, political.
Uh-oh.
Well, it kind of does. Yes, sir.
It kind of fits here. I was watching a YouTube thing and they were talking about advertising, or actually they were just talking about requesting things.
Yes,
And people will come up and they will request a small thing
right,
because you're willing to give in.
right.
And then when they come back and ask for the bigger thing, you're willing to give more because you gave the first time, you already
Yes.
feel obligated to do it the second time. Advertisers do that constantly. They talk you into buying something, and the car dealer will get you on a low price car and jack you up to a $40,000 car because they know if they can get you saying yes, they can go past that boundary, whatever you had set.
And I'm familiar with that research, and they'll get you, they go around and ask people if you just put a small sticker in your window. And
Yeah.
you just don't want to say no to that, because it's a small sticker, nobody's hardly gonna see it. So then they come back and they ask for a yard sign that's bigger. And it just continues to escalate after that because they get you to say that first yes. And so they keep on going. Because it's easier, you have less resistance, like you said, you have less resistance because you already started that momentum. So,
And you've used the word because several times. If you go up and ask somebody for some stupid request because I need peanut butter, if you put because in it, they're like 10 times more likely to comply to your request.
that's true.
And the people that are kicking your boundaries in, they know these things either by nature or by teaching, but they know how to get past those boundaries.
Yes, because intuitive, they find, we get it, when, we do something that gets what we want, we do that same thing again.
Yeah.
And we do less of what doesn't get us what we want. Our kids know the same stuff.
Yes, they do.
Or grandkids.
Grandkids.
We just tell them we don't negotiate with terrorists.
Yeah, we were on that, my trip that we was gone there for a few days, and my granddaughter was talking to my daughter and wanting stuff, and she kept saying no, no, no. She says, go talk to your grandpa, he'll buy you anything, which is about right. So anyway,
So
What
did
can I
you buy
say?
it? Did you buy it?
I bought it, everything she asked for, just about, except when they wanted some real big stuff that we would have had to buy extra suitcases to bring it home. And so you had to buy suitcases, then you had to pay $50 or $60 to fly that thing home. So anyway, they come up with a good idea. We got the Amazon way, and so, So yes, I'm buying it, but I'm buying it in a different way, from what I understand.
Yeah.
Let's go on. I have great boundaries in that area.
So
So,
do we.
yeah. And so, let's see, where am I at? Okay, so our past experiences were of feeling discomfortable, feeling discomfort, anger, resentment, or frustration with an individual. Okay, if you need to explain to them why you feel that way, because we're back to communication about our boundaries and communicating our limits, but we need to know our limits so we're able to communicate them. And sometimes we're not able to communicate our limits right off the bat until we refine them. So you communicate what causes you discomfort, because we know the discomfort, but sometimes we haven't been able to construct the language how to communicate that. So that's part of our learning process. It may have been because your limits have been crossed. Well, we've already said that. They make a suggestion here. Create a boundary chart. I thought this was interesting, but probably nobody will do it. But create a boundaries chart which outlines each boundary per each relationship category, and then fill it in with this boundary criteria. You'll feel comfortable and safe with it. Well, what they're saying is you need to come up with your boundary criteria, because your boundary criteria may not be the same for everyone. Okay, my grandkids' my boundary criteria with them is different than anybody else's, right? And so, like my wife or my daughter, and so that's different. Back in the early days, I have people that always wanted to borrow money, and I would loan them money. But then they would want more money, and then they'd want more money. Yes? And so I came up with the idea that there's something wrong here, and it's probably me. No, probably too. So I decided my first line was when I'd say, I'm loaning you money, and I'm not loaning you anymore until this is paid back, and you're going to pay interest. Well, and that oftentimes they'd come back and ask. I'd say, wait a minute, don't we have an agreement that I'm not loaning you anymore? And sometimes they say, well, I almost got it paid off. Well, wasn't the agreement? See, I had to take care of my end of the boundary, right? And so, and that's just one thing that I happen to learn. But they're talking about these boundary charts so that you could do that, so you can kind of navigate. And some people like to make lists and charts and everything, but you can do it. It'd be better to do it on paper, but you can do it mentally, okay? And so, and then you fill these boundary criteria in so that you'll feel comfortable and safe, or vice versa. And I don't feel comfortable and safe with these colleagues asking me certain things, like this is what they said, like my children's illness. You may not want people to ask about your children's illness, or about your dating life, or your parents' divorce, or whatever, And you don't have to tell people what you don't want to tell them, okay? And you don't have to feel bad about not telling them that, okay? Now, the most important thing here is that it's how you communicate this that matters, right? How you communicate, What I mean? I'm saying don't be mean, okay? Just be assertive, which is our next point, okay?
Did I tell you? Did I tell you?
I don't know. No?
I didn't want you to know.
Okay. I wasn't for sure. Okay, I figured it out. Well, thank you for that. Assertive, be assertive. Okay, number 2 is be assertive. Creating and stating boundaries is great, okay? But it has to be followed through to count, okay? All right? I know I've told this story about building a fence at one of my houses. One of the houses we moved into, my wife wanted, by the way. And so, and we got, and this young fellow that lived out in that neighborhood, because it was kind of there was a lot of building going on, out in that area, so he was used to having his way running around, because they were there maybe first, I guess, I don't know. And so he thought our yard was their yard, and he didn't like it, that there was a fence there, and there was a gate keeping him out, and so he went to beating on it. And I communicated to him that, that's a fence, this is my yard, and I don't want you to get hurt, because he was there the day before I put the gate up, and he was running around, and I had boards laying around, and potentially nails, and I had a shed moved in that was sitting there, and he got in the shed, and I had to run him off. But then I had to explain to him that if he tears up that door, somebody's going to pay for this. It'll be him or his parents. For some reason, he got the message. My next door neighbor, I came home one day, and it looked like somebody had painted on it was a wooden privacy fence, painted on it. And I went over and knocked on the door, and I said, hey, what's this? My wife said that you had your grandkids out, and there's paint on the fence. And he said, no, it's not paint, it's just chalk. I said, well, that's good, that's good. But it's not your fence. Now, it was a lot less deal since it was chalk, but I guess I figured that I might as well go ahead and establish that boundary, because it's not his fence. He said he'd clean it up. I said, well, thank you. Was that too hard?
No, because next time it probably would have been.
Could have been, we don't know. But I'm just, these are just things out of my past, And I wanted to be nice, but I was also doing what it said here, being assertive. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So you need to follow through, because if you don't follow through, then it doesn't count. Just because I have a fence up there, does that mean that my neighbor can tear my fence up or paint it or whatever, throw knives at it or shoot arrows at it or, no. And they never did those things, but I've had some of those things done in other places, so. All right, so the only way that we can truly be alert of our own boundaries is to, when things get crossed, our boundaries get crossed, to be direct, okay, right, with them. Be assertive, particularly if you're uncomfortable in doing that, and it can be scary, right? Because it's uncomfortable, and oftentimes the way we deal with uncomfortable feelings sometimes is to use anger. And I've worked on years of trying to move out of using anger to be assertive, okay? Now, assertiveness is not force, okay? All right? And so, you need to assert yourself, and it requires a developing skills, and you're gonna make some mistakes. You're gonna mess up. It's real easy in those type of situations to that old nature to push out and you go into it. But what you do is you just reel that stuff back in, and sometimes you have to say, I don't want to be that way, but this is the way I need to be, and we need to address this situation. So you just have to be nice. So, all right, here's some suggestions that they gave on how to be assertive. It says, did a waitress did the waitress get your order wrong? Ask for her to get it right. And you can do that in a nice way, right? Okay. Did the cashier overcharge you? You just have them correct it, If if it's really bothering you. Now, there's sometimes, like I was at Walmart the other day, and, I went through the scanner, and I actually scanned something that was 61 cents. And it was the last item, and I did it twice. Well, we'll just let it go. Now, I have in times past got some assistance and they got it off, but it's up to you what you do. Okay, you don't have, I don't feel like I was a victim. I just said, it's all right, I'll cheat them someplace else. Go ahead.
I have one when I'm working. If they mess up the person's order and the person contacts me after I drop it off, I'm basically supposed to just ignore them. But some people, I know who they are,
Right,
because I live around here.
yes,
And usually I'll give them the information on what they need to do, and they don't, all of them don't like it. And the other night, they left something out, and I was like, everything they got, I was like, what do I do? And I knew me explaining to him what to do, he would not understand. So I clocked out, I said, I'm gonna go get what messed up in your order, and I'm gonna bring it back to you. Just because I knew they wouldn't understand me. So I let down my boundaries for a
Right.
second, that I was not supposed to cross,
right.
and I,
According to the company, according to the company,
according to the company,
yes.
and I crossed it.
Yes, and the reason why is because the relationship that you had with that person was more important than the boundary you had.
Yeah.
Which, that's acceptable, it's you were in charge of the boundary. Now, there's a balance to everything, right? You may not be able to do that everywhere.
No.
But in that situation, you would feel worse, sounds like, if you didn't do it. And so congratulations. All right? So, let's see, what were the suggestions? We had several suggestions. I'm looking at the wrong category here. It was talking about cashiers, an unwanted romantic suitor messaging you. You can explain to them to stop. You're not interested in that, whether it's a he or she. And the rest of the story. And sometimes I have renters that call and they got problems in their they're having problems, but just because they're having a problem doesn't mean it's my problem, right? And so I oftentimes would just say, well, if it's a problem, call the police. And it's like they had never thought of that before. And if it's a family, I can't fix their family issues and other things that's going on, and chances are their problems were created by their lack of boundaries, right? Because I have people that talk to me about, well, I got stuff missing in my house and somebody must have broke in. And I said, well, it's probably somebody that's been here before. Somebody you know, right? About 95 to 99% of the time. Just saying, it's just the way it is. Okay, let's see. All right, here's a good one. A distant cousin. Anybody have any of those? Intrude into your life, maybe your dating life, or taking care of your kids, or whatever it is. They want to get their nose in your business, right? Probably nobody here has any of that, right? But I remember one time, I'm going to go ahead and talk about this one. Many years ago, we weren't able to have children, and we'd been married right at 15 years, and we weren't able to have children. I had a cousin. We were at their house visiting, and he's he's several years older than me, and he and his wife had been married a long time, very similar story, and it was a cousin that lived in Galena, matter of fact, and he said, what do you tell people when they just want to keep asking you about this, about why don't you have kids, and what's going on, why don't you, and they just keep on. And honestly, I told him, I kind of lied to him a little bit, but it helped me, okay? I told him this is how I felt, but I never had said it out loud before, to be honest with you. I said, I tell them it's none of their damn business. He said, that's a good answer.
Yes,
And for me, that helped me to clarify, this limits that we were talking about, that helped me clarify my limits or my boundaries, because it is none of their business. They didn't understand the torment that was going on, and they were adding fuel to the fire every time they went through their stuff. And so anyway, just thought I'd throw that in there for what it's worth. I hope I didn't mess anybody up, but if I did, that's the way it is. So, let's just stop there and go to number 3. All right? Practice making perfect, or practice making permanent. Okay? That's number 3. Are you learning anything? Is this helpful?
Yeah.
Good. Okay. All right. All right. Let's see. Where am I at? When you first start acting assertively, if it is a department if it departs from your habitual state, that means the habits that you normally do, you may be afraid of perceiving to be mean or rude, which we've kind of already talked about that. Some people might do that. So what you have to do is affirm your boundaries and communicate that you have personal value, right? I have personal value. You need to know that. Not that I have to push that over on somebody else, okay? But I need to know that, and that when you're assertive, that you're communicating that I have values, I have needs, and my needs are important, right? You have needs, they're important. I have needs, mine are important too. And that your feelings are as important as their feelings, okay? I don't have to let their feelings override and come into my world if I don't want to, right? I can have boundaries, okay? And so we got to practice this in our mind, and then practice it. Sometimes even role-playing can be very helpful to practice these boundaries, and practice being assertive, and practice not being mean, because saying mean things taste differently in your mouth than saying things that are not so mean. Have you ever noticed that?
Yep.
And sometimes we just have to get familiar, because sometimes we can get that taste or sense, or we can feel that rush. You know what I'm talking about? And we say, wait a minute. I need, you may not say anything, but I need to slow my roll a little bit, okay? Pull back, okay? Because I'm going a place that I choose not to go. And you practice that. And when you mess up, because you'll mess up. We make mistakes. You're human. And you're learning something new, so you're going to make mistakes. So what you do is you deal with it, okay? You acknowledge you made a mistake. You clean up your side of the street. Yes, that's not the way I want to be. And even if you offend somebody, then you say, wait a minute, that's not the way I want to be. That's what I did. I'm sorry. I have these boundaries, and I was having, and I was, I'm not very good on these boundaries, and you were stepping across, and I didn't know how to handle it. And you just communicated. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So we have to practice, practice, practice. And when you do that, you will like yourself more. When you don't do it, you will like yourself less. Isn't that the truth?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Now let's go to number 4. If all else fails, delete and ignore. Okay? Voice your boundaries first. Remember, we're talking about that. You communicate your boundaries. But before you can communicate your boundaries, you got to know what your boundaries are. Okay? And you need to have practice communicating your boundaries and do it in such a way that that it's understandable. Okay? Does that make sense? And then, hello, this is important. This is the second important part. You got to follow through with action. Shall I say that again?
Yeah.
You got to follow through with action.
One more time.
If you don't follow through with action, then you don't really have any real boundaries.
Isn't that delusional?
Yeah. I'm just pretending like I want the world to be a particular way, and it's just going to automatically fall into that place. And that's not the way that it is. Okay? And see, we teach people how to treat us. All right? So if they continue coming across our boundaries, it's because we taught them that they could. Hello? We taught them that they could. And so, in reality, talking about being delusional a while ago, in reality, then we shouldn't really get mad at them because they're just doing what we let them do. We should address ourselves. Right? So whose fault is it?
Ours.
Okay. So we doing any good on personal boundaries tonight?
Yeah.
Is this too much?
No.
Okay, good deal. And so, let's see. Okay, we'll go ahead and read this one. So, as long as we have tied up loose ends and given family members, friends, ex-partners, and whosoever, it may concern, okay, where am I at? Close friends, lost my place, sorry, there we are. Let me back up. Whosoever, it may be, it may be closure from any promises. In other words, if you've had any promises that you have, that you've tied them all up, you fulfilled your promises, you've done what you're supposed to do, and you made good on it, then you no longer, this is their statement, and I kind of like it. He says, and you no longer owe them anything. All right? Now, scripturally, the Bible talks about that we owe no man nothing but to love them, and we can love them, but that doesn't mean we have to let them mistreat us, right? And in fact, I looked this up, and this is called healthy loving, okay? Healthy loving, and we have to learn how to do this. We have to grow, okay? And we have to tie those ends up, and that's what step 9's been about, and about making amends, okay? And so we're working through those things and trying to fix things up, but we also have to grow up, okay? And part of it is clean up the past, but then we have to learn how to take care of ourselves, and that's what healthy boundaries is all about. Okay, does that make sense? So, if you have asserted yourself and you made it clear to another person that he or she is not respecting your boundaries, okay, it is okay to ignore, communications, correspondence, and any other thing from this point forward, okay? Remind yourself of your own worth, okay? Sometimes we forget our own worth. Should I say that again? Sometimes we forget our own worth.
One more time.
And that's the truth. Sometimes we forget our own worth. And so we need to remind ourselves of our own worth, and that no one has the right to make you feel uncomfortable or take your self-defined space away from you. What do you think about that?
Sounds good.
Ephesians 1:4, this is out of the ASV. It says, even as he choose us, should be chose, I think, even as he has chosen us in him before the foundation of the world, that we should be holy and blameless before him in love. So he has chosen us from the foundation of the world. We're valuable, we're important to God. We need to recognize our value in ourselves. We need to see who we are. We need to remember that. That doesn't mean that we're more important than somebody else, okay? But we're equally important, and that we can love them. And it's truly not really authentically, listen to this, loving them if we are not asserting our boundaries in a healthy and appropriate way. We're not being honest, okay? We're being, and if we really, and how you do it, and Tommy gave an excellent demonstration of it, how you have a boundary, it really depends on how valuable your relationship is, or what that relationship is all about. And so we operate with that mind, in that mind, and that is oftentimes when I am talking with people, and I'm thinking of one in particular. It was a relationship, marriage issue, and something was not right, and I said, well, which is more important, being right or having a relationship? What do you want? How do we address this? What is it that you want? That's a great question. What is it you want? Do you want to be right? Or do you want to have a relationship? Now, sometimes that's really, really hard for people, okay? And so we have to negotiate that, but that's kind of like grown-up stuff, right? Okay, comments? Questions?
Just because you love somebody doesn't mean you have to allow them to hurt you.
That's true.
You can love them and never speak to them again.
That's true. That's true. And I remember I was having some issues with some distant family, and they were trying to make demands on me. And they were distant, okay? And I sat down, and this is how paper sometimes can help you visualize things, but in a concrete way. And I sat down and I drew my social orbit. Okay, I'm in the center, and where people are, those people that are important to me, those people that interact in my life, and where these people were in my orbit, in my universe, okay? And they were way out there in space. And they gave very little into the system, into my system, but they seemed to want to make demands on me. It was a one-way street. And I decided, and I felt bad about it, until I drew it out and looked at it. And I thought, wait a minute, something's not right with this. And they can be the way they want to be, but that doesn't mean I have to engage with it. And for some reason, that helped me to feel better about the situation. I can do whatever they want, but I don't have to do whatever they want, just because they're family. There are people that's in my sphere, in my orbit, that are far more important and actually deserve more of my time, that are not biological family than this biological family was, or a person. So, anyway, it helped me. I don't know if that helped you, so. Comments? Anybody?
One of the most freeing things that I was ever taught was to realize I no longer have a need to punish myself.
Good.
You know, if somebody wants to beat me up, I don't have to feel guilty about it. I don't have to do whatever it is and force myself to their wishes. I no longer have a need to punish myself because I'm protecting myself.
That's awesome. It's a good lesson. Sometimes we've learned those lies. People have forced them on us, or we accidentally picked them up. With coping skills that we maybe implemented to help us get through things. So, all right, we're getting ready to close. Do you have any thoughts before we close?
Make healthy boundaries.
Do what?
Make healthy boundaries.
Make healthy boundaries. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May His face shine upon you and give you His peace. And make healthy boundaries and make healthy choices. Right? Till next week. Bye to the internet and to the rest of you. Okay? I'm going to shut this video off.